go.
Yeah, you're really quiet.
Hello, I'm Chris Curran, and I'm here to talk with Kate Riordan for the wonderful UK Crime Book Club. Just to remind you quickly who I am, my latest book is called The Guest House, and that is under the name Abbie Frost, which is my pseudonym. I've written 4 books as Chris Curran, and this one as Abbie Frost because it's slightly different. So that's really me. More importantly, it's been 2020 was just an awful year, and all kinds of, as well as all the really nasty things, all our plans and everything went completely out the window. A couple of good things did happen, and that was I found the UK Crime Book Club, and I also found some brilliant new authors, one of whom was Kate. And I found your latest, which is The Heat Wave, and I absolutely loved it. I know it was a Richard and Judy Crime Book Club choice, wasn't it? But I didn't find it that way. I found it, I think, as I usually do, through a recommendation from one of my friends who knows I love Gothic fiction, knows I'm a huge fan of Daphne du Maurier, and so she said, well, if you like that kind of thing, you're going to love this one, The Heat Wave. So I read it during the first lockdown. I did love it. I went back and read everything else you've written. I think, don't know. You can correct me if I've missed something. And so when the UK Crime Book Club said, "Oh, would you like to talk to another author?" You were my first choice, Kate. And
thank you.
So maybe if you can tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about The Heat Wave, and maybe about your other books.
Yes, thank you for inviting me on, and thank you for reading all my books. It's always a really nice compliment, especially when you've been recommended by a friend and not just seen it on a bookshelf. So that's really lovely. Thank you. And thank you to everyone listening and watching. So I am Kate Riordan. I've been writing for, like about 7 years now. I don't know. Quite a long time with Penguin, and Heatwave was my 4th with Penguin. I actually also did Sanditon, which was, if anyone caught it, it was on ITV. It was an Andrew Davis, Jane Austen kind of adaptation. And I did the official novelisation for that, which was very stressful because I had like 9 weeks to write it. But generally I write sort of Gothic kind of mystery suspense books, and there is usually kind of a crime in them, although I wouldn't say I'm strictly a crime writer, but I'm always fascinated by kind of what humans can do if they're pushed to the end of their endurance. So inevitably there are crimes in my book. Heatwave is, where is it? I've got it here. So the Heatwave is set in Provence, mainly in the 90s. And it's the story of a very toxic mother and daughter relationship. The narrator is Sylvie, who is returning. She's French, Sylvie, and she's returning to France for the first time in a decade. And really the book is about what happened 10 years before in Provence to her eldest daughter, Elodie, who died then. So it's kind of unfolding the secrets and the mystery of that. I really enjoyed that. And I think hopefully, we were talking about this, Chris, weren't we, that it's kind of quite nice escapism because it's set in a lovely hot place where there's bad things happening, but it's a beautiful place, and that's quite nice for escapism. But previous to the Heatwave, I wrote The Stranger, which was set in Cornwall. I love Cornwall. I'm actually lucky enough to have a place down there, although I'm not allowed there at the moment. So I always wanted to set a book there, and that was very much sort of Daphne du Maurier inspired. She's a big heroine of mine. I love her books. I think Rebecca's one of the best books ever written. And I think you can see the influence there. Like obviously nothing like as good as Daphne, who is. But, that was a real inspiration for me. And that was set in the war in 1940, and it's just over a 6-week period because previous to that, I'd written 2 books, The Girl in the Photograph and The Shadow Hour, which were both big, chunky, dual timeline books. And they're really complicated to write. And I just thought, I'm going to give myself a break and write a book set just in 6 weeks. And it's about land girls, but it's very deliberately not the usual kind of hearty land girl book about, kind of pulling together and gravy lines on the back of the legs. It's not like that. It's actually, again, somebody dies, and we're working out who's done what when. So yeah, I don't know if that's a decent précis. You're very quiet, Chris, so I will lean in a bit.
I'm just listening hard, and I'm also checking out if anyone has got any other questions. But I haven't read Sanditon, so I should be onto that one. Although I have to admit, I'm not a fan of rewrites, new versions of things like Jane Austen. So I didn't watch.
Maybe don't read it. I won't mind.
I didn't watch the series, but yeah, it's brilliant to be offered the chance to do that. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, The Stranger. Your book, The Stranger, I thought was wonderful, and again that setting. But your other book, all your books until the Heatwave have been set in the past, haven't they? Even the Heatwave, which is early 90s, isn't it?
Heatwave, yes. So it's the 90s. So for me, that's not in any sense historical, and it's a bit freaky when sort of very young publishing people say, it's a period piece, and it's like, no, it's not. God, how old am I? But yes, it's mainly in the 90s, but it also does go back actually into the 60s and 70s and 80s. But yes, that to me is really contemporary, because I've written books set in Victorian times. But the book I'm working on at the moment, which is set in Italy, is actually properly contemporary. So there's kind of WhatsApp in it, and kind of Facebook and things, which is exciting for me.
Also creates difficulties, doesn't it? But
yeah, it does. It's a pain with, especially writing kind of mystery and suspense, because a lot of those kind of, how someone would hunt somebody down is kind of, it's much harder to do. Well, it's much easier to do, which makes it harder for the writer. But it also creates quite good sort of plots. I mean, without giving anything away, there's a character at the beginning who gets in touch with an old flame via kind of social media in a way that you couldn't have done so easily. And many a marriage guidance session has been about people looking up old flames, and that's quite a recent phenomenon to the degree that it happens now, I think. So so it does offer opportunities as well, I think.
Well, I want, with the guest house, my most recent one, not really my latest, I wanted to sort of do a contemporary Gothic novel. And so first of all, I used social media to add a bit of spice and sort of get the whole thing going. But then I wanted to get rid of it all. But having an isolated house is quite good, because you could, even nowadays, even completely contemporary, there are places where you can either not have all the social, all the media, or the internet and all that, or you can sort of find ways to get rid of them, which I hope I did.
Yes, there are still, fortunately, still black spots, I think, which is useful for when someone's being chased into a ravine or something. Then the signal goes, and that's quite useful.
I was sorry.
No, go on.
I was quite proud of the book I'm just finished writing, which is in now. Obviously, I managed to get rid of the phones, and I thought it was a really clever way. So I was quite pleased about that. So I haven't seen it done that way before exactly, but it is good when you can use it, when you can use all that modern stuff and actually make it part of the plot. I don't know if you read Robert Harris's The Ghost. Just called The Ghost. And I remember reading that and going, oh, that's so clever. When he gets into the car and the sat nav is on from the last person who used it, who he wanted to trace. And so he can follow to where the person went. I remember thinking, oh, that was so clever. Wish I'd thought of that.
Yes, it does. Like, there's another opportunity there to use things. And I think also the way social media works in that it kind of makes people quite narcissistic and also kind of present a very particular version of themselves to public life, which can then really undo them if that's not actually how they're living. You can present yourself as much more glamorous or much more successful and then be found out, and then that can put into there's a whole chain of events that can come from there. So I think I'll stick with contemporary for a while, because there's a lot. It's kind of quite a rich scene to mine, I think.
And everyone can relate, and not just the fact that it's contemporary, but the fact that we all put on a face for Facebook and everything to a certain extent. I mean, some of us try to be as honest as we can be without humiliating ourselves. But, you know, there are people who are, you see these pictures of these influencers who look nothing like they're suddenly asked to go on TV, and you go, well, that doesn't look like you look on your Instagram pages and those kinds of things. What happened to you?
Yeah.
Nothing.
No
I just took away the
filters.
filters. Oh, sorry, there are people here
just
asking questions. Can I just... Hi, Samantha. Hello, we've already met you, but hello. She's saying hello to both of us, and Caroline as well. So hello. And there's a Facebook user, I don't know who it is, but it just says Facebook user, who said, oh, I'm a fan of Kate's too, just like me. Heatwave made my top 20 of 2020. And
lots of 20s.
No, I didn't write the screenplay, sadly. Oh, there isn't a question, it's just a comment, a compliment, which you like.
Thank
we
you.
all like those, no one minds. And then, there were a couple came in earlier that I actually noted down. Martin Lee, he said, hello, Abbie. Hi, Martin. What's the hardest part of being a writer, and what's the most fun? So, can I just say, I think the hardest bit is getting stuck in the middle, thinking of the idea is brilliant. You know, getting to the end is wonderful. Getting stuck somewhere in the middle and realizing perhaps the idea is a certain idea you thought of, which might even have been central, or a certain character just isn't working and you're going to have to get rid of it. That's the hardest. I mean, the most fun bit is getting to the end and then having people say they like it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or fun, I suppose, launches, nice launches.
Yes. Not that we have too much of that at the moment, but no, I think the hardest part for me is I've got a bit better at it lately, but I've always struggled a bit to get a routine going with my writing. So there's quite a lot of guilt, because I'll be really good for a week and write loads, and then I'll have a rubbish week where I won't write anything, and I'm plagued with guilt and I feel like a real imposter. And, you know, what am I doing? I've got this lovely job that I dreamt of doing, and I've got a book deal, and I'm still not bloody doing it. Like, what the hell? I've got better at that lately, but I agree with you actually that it's losing faith in your idea. There's a lovely quote that I don't actually know who it's attributed to, but it must have been a writer who'd had a bad day that came up with it. But it's that, you know, every novel is a beautiful idea ruined. And you do have these great ideas and you think, oh, wow. And you can see kind of the shape of it. And then you come to write it and it just, you do wreck it. You know, it's never as good as you hoped.
No, the book in your head is a masterpiece every time, isn't it? And then the reality, it's like that quote, who was it? Not Ava Gardner, or one of those famous film stars, who says you go to bed with Gilda, which was her most popular character, and then you wake up with me, and that's sort of. But then sometimes when you write a book, you and it's a bit different. You think, well, actually, that's better than I thought. You know, it may be not the masterpiece I dreamed of, but it's better than I thought it was going to be. I actually like the way it's changed. So I quite like that.
I agree. And you know, sometimes you write bits and you go back to them when you're editing and you think, I have no memory of writing that at all. I quite like that line.
Yes.
And that's nice. But I think in terms of fun, I think, yes, like you say, getting to the end is definitely fun. I do like editing, actually. I think I feel like as soon as I've got a book, you know, a book with a beginning and a middle and an end that's like 90,000 words-ish, I feel quite safe. And I feel like I've got something to work with then. You know, I'm about 45,000 words in at the moment, so I'm right at the midpoint, and that to me is starting to feel nicer now, because I feel like I'm about to be on the downhill. But that getting up to that bit I find really terrifying, because I just don't have the faith that, because I quite like being efficient with my writing. I have friends who ditched whole manuscripts, or, you know, massive chunks, and I think it would have to be so bad for me to do that at this stage. I'm just not willing to do it. I'd rather edit it 800 times than just ditch it completely. But I think also the other fun thing I think that I've found from being a writer is actually other writers, because I didn't expect that. I don't know what I thought, but I thought we'd all be in our kind of silos and, you might do a bit of sort of oh hello on Twitter and things, but I've made some really, really good, like some of my best friends ever are writers now.
Yeah.
And it is a uniquely weird job, and I think because it's the sort of job people say they want to do, and it's sort of purported to be quite hard to get into, you feel like you can never complain about it, and you can never sort of be ungrateful, but actually it's hard and it's precarious, and it's one of those really weird industries that's very gushy and very lovely and polite on the surface, but actually it's quite ruthless because they have to make money.
It's a business, isn't it?
It's a business, and writers get dropped all the time, and so you're never really, and I know writers who are incredibly successful and bestsellers, #1 every time they have a new book out, won prizes, and they're still worried about their next book and its sales. So I don't think you ever really relax.
Yeah, and it's not just, I mean, if you're very successful, it's that tall poppy syndrome thing, isn't it? People feel that you can't be hurt. I mean, I'm not very successful, but I imagine they feel you can't be hurt because you're so successful that people can say anything, and they think they also think all writers are rich, which is very far from the truth, isn't it? So you can easily be hurt, and bad reviews, I should imagine, hurt Stephen King, I should imagine, or any very, very successful author still gets hurt because they put their heart and soul into that book. I think I don't know a writer who doesn't really, want it to be really, really good.
Definitely. You have pride in your work, and there are very few jobs where you go under that sort of amount of scrutiny for something that you've put work into. I mean, most people work on a project at work. They might have an interview with the boss saying, well, this bit needs a bit of work, but they won't have somebody giving you 1 star and saying, what a load of...
That's right. You don't know what people think generally. I mean, you might have a review or something, an appraisal or something at work, but it's not the same as having someone say, I know someone said something about mine, these stinking characters or something. I thought, what? Why say that? They'd actually given the book 3 stars, which seemed a bit odd, but I thought, why they haven't done anything to you. It was just so, I thought, why use such language? I'm going to try and get on with some of these. We've got so many questions. Brilliant. Martin Lee also asked, how were you signed by a publisher?
How was I what, sorry?
How were you signed by a publisher or your publisher?
Actually, I was really lucky because I went to auction for The Girl in the Photograph, which was my dream. And it was very weird because I was on holiday in France and I was getting quite a cut off. I was with all my university friends actually at this sort of chateau that we'd rented out, really scruffy, weird chateau in Normandy. And I decided to keep it a secret from everybody because I was so convinced that this auction wouldn't go right and everybody would pull out. But there were 6 publishers in it. And I kept saying to my agent, is there any chance that I won't get a deal out of this? But thankfully I did, and I ended up with Penguin. But that was, I didn't sleep that week because it can get going very quickly. Like people had read it overnight and then started putting preempt offers in and things like that, which is, really exciting. But actually I found it totally terrifying. And thank God I had a lovely agent who could do it all behind the scenes. And I just had to hang on and wait and hope. But yeah, that was lovely. And I'm with Michael Joseph, which is an imprint of Penguin. And they've been fab, and I've been with them for 4 books. And I'm really lucky. I've got a fantastic editor called Jill, who I work with very closely, and who's actually quite an unusual editor in the sense that I think a lot of editors aren't as hands-on as her. She really loves getting stuck in. I think people assume that, I think editors in the old days did do a lot more editing, whereas now it's often more of a project management role with coordinating with publicity and marketing and all that kind of thing. But Jill does that, and she also does proper editing, so I wouldn't be without her. But yeah, that's how I got signed. So it was actually the proper dream.
Well, now I got a bit distracted there because I got all overexcited because I've seen the Facebook user who commented about the heat wave was from Andrew Davis, hence the Sanderson. So is it that Andrew Davis who wrote the Sanderson?
Well, Andrew Davis wrote basically it was Jane Austen's last unfinished novel.
The television. Yeah. I think it is. Ooh, I feel all overcome now, and I feel really guilty saying I didn't see the series because I love all his other things. Honestly, I do. Andrew.
No, he's great, and
Mr. Davis.
I wish I'd got to meet him. I didn't get to meet him, but it's actually a beautiful series. It's
I'm
filmed
sure.
beautifully.
Yeah.
So yeah, look at it. It was on ITV, but I think you can buy the DVD and things. So yeah.
Oh, I feel bad now.
Quick plug for that.
Please forgive me. Okay. So there's a couple here from Lorraine Mace, lovely woman, and she says, "Hi, Chris. Hi, Lorraine." Oh, she's asking questions of me. How many books have I published under my own name? Are they similar in genre to Abbie Frost?
I was going to ask you about that.
To the Abbie Frost novels. And well, I've written 4 books as Chris Curran, and only one as the guest host. It was under a pseudonym. Basically, really, it was my editor's suggestion, insistence, you might say, because it was quite a bit different. It's still crime, but much more, much darker, more sinister, bit more bloodthirsty. So a little bit different, very much more gothic. But also it was published under talking about being published. It was published under a different, not a different publisher, but a different imprint. The fiction, the Harper fiction, which is sort of the main crime imprint, rather than well, it was Killer Reads. I used to be published by there. It's now called One More Chapter. But, so it was a different, it's on a different platform, sort of. That's why it was a different one. And these are ones I got from earlier on. When we could both do that? My next book will be out under the name of Chris Curran, to answer that question, and should be out in 2021, but I don't know exactly when. So what about you, Kate? What's your next one going to be?
It is. Volume is just absolutely nuts. Hang on. I'll just put it down. Sorry, we're having a few technical difficulties tonight, aren't we?
We are. We had major ones before. Kate's crouched on the floor, in case anyone wants to know.
Crouched on the floor. My foot's gone to sleep, but I'm all right. I won't be able to get up at the end. My book is out in 2022, and I think it will be kind of May or something like that, because it's quite a summery book again, like the Heatwave was. So yeah, but they want it in June this year, so I have a lot of writing to do in the next few months.
If it's only 40,000, yeah, you might have a lot. But
it's all right. I'm in the zone now. I'm in the zone. It's all right.
Good, but it's contemporary, which is going to be interesting. I shall be. You probably don't have a title yet.
Well, no,
I'm not allowed to tell.
I better not say it because I'll
no. All right.
But it's set in Italy, and I was really hoping to go. I had a trip booked last summer, but obviously, we know what happened there. I don't even know if I'll manage to get there, in May this year, but I'm hoping so. We'll see. The vaccine's all rolling through now, so maybe I'll get to go. But I feel like I really need, because I know France really, really well, and I did go to France for a month actually to do research for the Heatwave, but I could have written it without going, because I've always been there all my life, whereas Italy's a bit, I don't know it as well, so I feel as though I need an ought to go.
You do. My last book as Chris Curran. I've got the title. Which was All the Little Lies. Yes, it was All the Little Lies, and it has a section in Italy. I had to go to Italy to research that. That was lovely.
One does.
I've forgotten the name of the place, but it was on in the Italian Riviera.
Oh, nice.
Where those Cinque Terre villages are. Oh, absolutely gorgeous. So I had to go, really. You can't not go, can you? No. I think if I set a book in the Arctic, perhaps I might think about just looking that up.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of these questions. We're getting brilliant questions. Thank you so much, everyone. There's Alison O'Leary said, "Hello, Abbie." Hello, Alison. I know you. Do you ever? Oh, this is good. Do you ever base your characters on people you've actually known? And if so, do they recognise themselves?
It's like a composite thing usually. You kind of use bits of people. You wouldn't maybe lift a whole person unless you wanted to get revenge. But actually, I think that people don't recognise themselves. It's really funny. I think you can be quite brutal about somebody, you know, your auntie who's really a busybody or whatever, and they wouldn't realise, because people have a very particular view of themselves, which is generally quite positive. So yeah, I think it tends to be more that you make up the character, and then what I tend to borrow is actually not the big personality things. It's quirks. It's those funny things that, you know, somebody's got slightly hypochondriac tendencies and always taking their temperature, which my mum does. You know, I might lift that because I think that's quite sweet, because it's those little idiosyncrasies that I think make characters really real. As opposed to just saying, oh yes, that neighbour of mine, I'm going to use him. But yeah, I think you gather stuff like that all the time.
I think you do.
Well.
And people have said to me, oh, that's so and so, as you always somebody else, not them. And it never really is. It certainly is never. I never sort of think, oh, I'm going to put that person in a book or in this book. But obviously sometimes they get these quirks or these, and it just fits, and you have to put it in because you're always observing. You know, things like, I remember putting it a bit in a book about a woman with mascara sort of caked on in little dots on the end of her eyelashes. And I thought, oh, that's a woman I met. I remember now. And I'm sitting, you know, I was sitting there talking to her and looking at her eyelashes. She would never know that. Well, I hadn't thought of it, but it just, that image came to me. So they don't seem to recognise them. A few people have said, but they're always usually wrong. You know, that's the thing.
I think so.
And oh gosh, so many questions. Here's one for you here from Joe Singleton. It says, if you only had 8 weeks to write the Sanditon book, did you have to write it differently than you normally would? And did you enjoy writing to such a tight deadline? That was a tight one, wasn't it?
Actually, I didn't. I mean, to be honest, I had the scripts to work off. So I had Andrew Davis's scripts, which I had to sign an NDA for, which was very exciting. So I'm saying, I had only like 8-9 weeks to write it. I actually had the story, I had the characters, I had the dialogue, I had the plot. But I suppose I was not only turning it into prose, but also turning it into prose that sounded vaguely Austen-like. And they had a very strict brief. They wanted it to be accessible but feel like Jane Austen. And I don't know if anyone's read Longbourn by Joe Baker, which was actually from the perspective of the servants in Pride and Prejudice. It's really good, actually. I really recommend it. But it was that they wanted that sort of feel. But I did actually secretly quite enjoy it, because at school I was always much better at exams than kind of coursework over a year. And in a funny way, having such a short time to write it really focused me. And I had, TV people and book people kind of waiting, and I had to coordinate with them. So I just had to get on with it. And it reminded me of being a journalist, which I was before writing novels. And so it felt quite collaborative in that way. And it was quite cool to be connected to it because, it's Andrew Davis and it was telly. So no, I just kind of got on with it. And actually I wrote a lot of it in France. So on this month in France, when I was supposed to be researching the heat wave, it just so happened that I ended up being commissioned to do Sanditon. So I actually did it quite a lot there. And I just did like 2 hours a morning. It wasn't like a crazy, I'd love to be all like, I was up till 4. I wasn't actually, because as I say, I had all the foundations there. I just had to turn it into a story. So
I think you said earlier something about, you're a bit of a, you didn't describe it like this, but sort of a bit of a haphazard writer, which I certainly am, and that it's not like 9 to, wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, write till noon, then stop, that certainly isn't me. But having a deadline, when I have had a deadline, and I did for the guest house actually, that actually, it pushed me much more, and I actually found it quite helpful.
There's a weird thing about having a tight deadline. I think that's what we're conditioned to. I mean, a year deadline, which often a novel will be, or maybe longer, is kind of, you can't, it's very hard to manage that actually, unless you're very disciplined.
Yeah.
I've actually got into a really good thing. I'm a tutor at this, at the Novelry, which is a sort of a creative writing school that's all online. So it's actually perfect for these times, although predates it. And being busier with that, I don't do a huge number of hours a week, but actually I'm more productive with my own writing since I've been doing that, because it's that kind of, you know, give someone busy, you know, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So, and also one of the things that they teach on that is to sort of try and get this time in a particular time in the day that you stick to when you write, and particularly first thing in the morning. And I am not a morning person at all, but I've been doing this thing where I kind of, when I sort of wake up about 7 or 8, because again, that's quite early for me, I write for an hour actually in bed with my laptop, and I'm sort of, it's before the day gets on top of you and before you're checking your phone and all that kind of stuff comes in and distracts you. And I just don't overthink it. I go and get a coffee and just write for an hour. And I get like maybe 1,000 words out. And then for the rest of the day, I feel really like great because I don't feel guilty because I've done some. And obviously when I start editing, I'm going to need to do more, because you need to kind of really get stuck into the manuscript, probably like 2-3 hours at a time. But for getting this first draft done, I'm just doing an hour a day at the moment. And then, yeah, and it's, you know, the words are racking up, thankfully.
So about 1,000 words in an hour, do you do? Or?
Yeah, I did like 1,300 today, but 600 yesterday. So it sort of depends. But I'm really trying to do that even kind of on Saturday and Sunday, and, you know, every single day.
I would like to work just in the week, but I always end up working on Saturday and Sunday. I just can't. That's one of the less good things I think about writing like that you don't have any downtime except between books when you're waiting for something.
Or if you're editing, then you kind of get off, then, which is nice. But yeah, you're right. We don't have that delineation between work and leisure in the same way. So yeah.
I keep on looking at these questions.
Yeah.
Samantha tells me that it isn't the same Andrew Davis. Oh, that's funny, because the question he asked sounded as if it was. She said it's not the same one.
Shame.
But he did say hence the Sanderson. Oh, well, anyway, I haven't offended the real one.
No, it would have been very exciting if it had been the Andrew, Sir Andrew Davis.
I was all excited there, but never mind. So, hang on. Yes, a nice one. Another nice one that came in earlier from Alison O'Leary. She said, Abbie, I know you're a fan of Golden Age crime, and why do you think that this genre is so enduringly popular? Well, I am, and I think it's so popular because there's such clever books. I mean, there were some wonderful writers in the Golden Age who set a sort of standard, and that you have to really keep up. The people who write it nowadays, I suppose, like Lucy Foley and people like that, and you know, I tried to sort of do a closed circle one with the Guest House. They have that standard to live up to, and I think also those books are very, very satisfying. There's nearly always, not always, but nearly always, a sort of resolution that's satisfying. And they make you think. And yeah, I think that's probably why. What do you think, Kate?
Yeah, I agree. I think they're very satisfying because they're a kind of puzzle that you end up solving. And I think they're weirdly, especially in these sort of times, I think they're weirdly comforting, because anything going back in time, even if you're not literally going back in time, but you're using those tropes of kind of Agatha Christie, it feels very weirdly safe. They're very civilized kind of murders generally. It's not gritty and scary like the world is, I think. So I think they're very escapist actually. So I totally see the eternal appeal of them. But yeah, they're like an intellectual puzzle, I think. They're like a cryptic word or something. And yeah, I totally get why that appeals.
I mean, the kind of books, certainly the kind of books you write, and I think with the Guest House I write, Gothic kind of fiction, they're escapists as well. And I think that's, even though, you know, some dark things happen,
Yeah.
not many people are likely to be in that kind of situation. So, you know, the escapist bit fits that. I'm still looking at these things. Andrew Davis has apologised. It wasn't him. It was a different person. But he wishes he'd written Sanditon. That's why. Oh, never mind, Andrew. We don't mind. We're relieved, actually, in a way. I am. So, let me see. We'll see if there's anything else. Oh, yes. This is good. This is Joe Singleton. I think
I'm going to move my phone and be more comfortable.
Yeah, good idea.
Get to sit on my blooming chair. Right, there we go. Hurrah!
You can still see you.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's so much more comfortable.
This Joe Singleton said, have either of you, no, wait a minute. Oh, do you both read for pleasure the same genre that you write in, or do you prefer something different?
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Start with that one then.
I do both. I definitely read stuff that's similar to what I write because I feel like I should know what's going on in the market, and also because I write what I like to read. So if I've got to spend a long time with my book, which I do, writing, you know, 90,000 words, it's got to be the kind of book that I like to read myself. So yes is the answer, but I also like reading, you know, for a change, I'll read something really quiet and literary occasionally, and then, you know, maybe something really funny, because I'm not really doing funny in mine. So I you know, was a reader well before I was a writer, and I'll read anything. I just love, I have to have a book on the go or I feel a bit sort of depressed, really.
And one to follow on. One that, you know, a book on the go, and one you know you're going to read next is what I have to have, or I feel a bit sick. Yeah, I read in the genre I write in, and that's why I chose to write crime. But I also, like you, I read everything else. I love historical, so your books suit me very well, the ones that are set in the past. I also like a bit of sci-fi. I like a bit of horror occasionally, if it's not too horrible. So, and literary fiction, of course, when, you know, when it's a really good book, then how can you resist it? You know, I think it would be. Some people say they only read one genre, don't they? And I think that's a bit of a shame. I think, you know, try to read a few other things. Just take a little chance. Doesn't do any harm, does it?
Yeah.
Especially if you get it from the library.
Yes.
I think you still can. Sorry, I'm just looking to see if there's any of these. To you both, and I don't think I can answer this question, Lisa. This is to you both. Who is the most famous author you've met? Oh no, I haven't met some. And did you go all fangirl?
That's a good one. I met a few when I was a journalist. I did quite a few book interviews, which is, I was dreaming of being a novelist then already. So I used to kind of sneakily ask them questions about how they got their book deals and things, and pretend it was for the interview and it was actually for me. But I met and interviewed Kazuo Ishiguro, who wrote Remains of the Day. And I was actually terrified of going because he's so clever, and I thought, oh God. I was quite young, and I thought, oh, this is a bit, so I'm going to be like the work experience girl turning up. But he was lovely, and I went to his house and had mint tea. And I was a bit fangirly, but actually he completely disarmed me because he was so nice. Also Gillian Flynn, I did an interview with for her first book. So before Gone Girl.
Sharp Objects.
For Sharp Objects, exactly, and she was great. And she was really inspiring because she'd been a journalist with Empire magazine and that had actually got made redundant, and she was really grateful for it because it's what made her write the novel, because she had no job suddenly. And she was really great and really humble, and then she went on, and you know, then Gone Girl was this massive success, and I was like, oh, I talked to her once. So yeah, I've met a few, and they're always really nice. I can't think of Bret Easton Ellis I met as well. I interviewed him, who wrote American Psycho. I interviewed him weirdly at the Savoy Hotel and he was in his bathrobe, so that was a bit Harvey Weinstein, but he was very well behaved. So no, he was nice. So yeah, no, I've been lucky to, you know.
I tend not to. I've seen or been in the same room as quite a lot of famous authors, but I tend to run away. I'm frightened of them, or I'm frightened of sort of, you know, of going a bit fangirly and being a bit embarrassing to myself, and I never know what to say to them. So I haven't met many. I've always been surprised, as you say, at how nice they are. I mean, I was at a conference alongside Lee Child, and he is so fabulous, and he was willing to have selfies with everyone, but he's so tall.
Is he?
He's 6'6" or something, and I'm only about 5 foot, so I selfie with him anyway. So that was my excuse. And Ian Rankin, who's also quite tall, actually. And Ian Rankin was wonderful. Again, I didn't meet him. I overheard him. You know, I lurk when I know they're there somewhere. And he was at this conference, and he was wearing a name badge. And I thought, how sweet. You know, putting on, everyone knows who you are. The only thing I thought was, oh, I had to look up. I didn't think he was going to be that tall. Otherwise, he was clearly recognisable as Ian Rankin. So, and I haven't seen Andrew Horowitz was another one I saw, who's also tall. They all seem to be tall. At another conference, and he seemed very nice. And I've since had a little tiny Twitter conversation with him. So he's obviously very friendly. So I think, yeah. You do feel, well, I do feel fangirly, too fangirly. I wish I could sort of, you know, just walk up to them and say, hi, I'm an author too.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a female thing. I don't know. I just think you probably never change. You know, the ones I've met are still quite amazed that they're there and they're in that position. I think they don't feel as though anyone could possibly feel like that about them because they're just them. So I think they're just humans, and I think writers are always glad to be out and about because we get quite lonely. So we're generally quite excited to be at things. And they probably feel the same.
I'm sure they'd be happy. Yeah, I'm sure they're happy. I'm sure they wouldn't mind if I did, you know, as long as I didn't grab them or cling on.
Yeah,
they don't mind who does. You know, they don't have to know me. But anyway, I that's me. I'm just looking to see what something else. There's lots of other things. I did say I wished I'd written it. I don't know who said that. I couldn't really work out what that said. There's definitely more here, but I can't see them, so I'm going to have to go on. Oh yes, there's another one from Lorraine Mace, who we did a question from before, who said, how important, this is a good one, an interesting one, how important do you find feedback at the beta reading stage? So that's quite interesting. Do you get other people to read?
Yeah, I haven't let anyone read any of the one I'm working on at the moment, apart from my editor who just wanted a quick look. And I think I'm going to, usually, like, my mum's actually always been really helpful because she was an English teacher and she's a big reader. She reads everything. And obviously she's very encouraging and biased. So it's always nice to get her input early on, and then she's very positive. But I think she said this time she'd really like to read the finished version rather than kind of work in progress, just to sort of see it from when it's done and polished and nice. So I haven't let many people, but I do have a few writer friends who we sort of share manuscripts, and it's always, you know, it's really positive stuff always. And, you know, I do the same for them. And it's all about encouraging each other at that stage. You know, we're not picking it apart. We let our editors do that. So I think you pick people that you really trust and who would be your kind of ideal readers. And I think that can, you know, just getting that initial reaction, like you have screenings for films where there's unexpected bits that people like and unexpected characters people warm to, and that's really helpful because you can maybe make more of them. So I think it is hugely useful, but I wouldn't do it too widely. I think people who, you know, aspiring writers who post chapters online are very brave. I don't think I would dare do
I know. I was very lucky. In fact, that's perhaps why Lorraine has asked, because I know her from an online writing group that we belonged to a while ago. It's now defunct, but it was a private one. And a lot of people on there had been onto one of those public ones that they all came about 10, 15 years ago, I don't know. And I remember looking at them and reading bits from them and thinking, I would never put my work on there. I wouldn't have the nerve to have anybody looking at it, reading it and tearing it apart at this stage, before I was published. And then with the group that we belonged to, which was a private one, and was only like if you knew someone or if you were recommended, so you felt safe there, and it was kind. But I was able to, certainly my first book went through lots and lots of revisions because of things, and these were writers, good writers, most of them, all of them, and so that they helped me really knock it into shape. As time's going on, I've used less beta readers because, as you say, your editor does more from an earlier stage, and also people like to read the finished stuff. And if you feel, well, let them. I think you're more confident as you go and more confident in your own voice.
I was going to say that plays a part, definitely. You kind of think, I mean, obviously you have those days where you think, oh my God, I can't do this, and I don't seem to have learned anything from being 4 or 5 books in. But you have really, and you know that you can get to the end because you've done it a few times before. So,
and you do know what's not working. I mean, my most recent, the book I've just written, I knew there was something wrong with the ending, but I still sent it off to my editor, and she sent it back and said, yeah, the ending's rubbish. Rewrite it. And I thought, well, I knew that. I was just hoping she'd say it wasn't.
You do know.
You do know. You know, and that horrible voice goes, just ignore that. Just carry on and ignore it. It's all right. But really, and the beta readers have helped you get to that stage. The things that they've said, have you noticed you always do this? Or have you, I picked up something that's a little quirk of yours that's not very good. So all those, the beta readers that I had in the past are all still in my head, I think. But I still have some family members that like reading and that I know have got good judgment and not just going to say, yes, it was great. I do get them to have a look. I'm looking at these other questions here. Here's somebody recommending something. Do either of you read psychological thrillers? If yes, I highly recommend Mine by Casey Kelleher. It's on Kindle. Well, of course, I certainly read psychological thrillers because I write them. And I mean, I know yours are kind of gothic ones, but they are psychological, aren't they? The characters. We haven't talked much about the characters, really. Can I just say something, because your characters are so wonderful, and in the Heat Wave, Elodie, what a fabulous character.
Elodie, she's, I mean, not to give too much away, but she is, well, I'll have to really, but she's got sort of psychopathic tendencies, and we see her as a little girl and growing up, and that was really was quite fun to write, I'm not going to lie. And I did some research into psychopathy, and I think what was fun about her is that she was really unknowable, actually, and I deliberately made her very beautiful. So she's really actually quite frightening, but she's very beautiful to look at and very kind of sexy. So that was fun to have that kind of contrast. So she has a lot of power. Her looks can give her a lot of power, especially over men. And yet she's really icy cold. And actually, I had a ridiculous thing when it came out in America. I was going to be possibly doing a short story for a magazine, and they wanted a spin-off story. And I sort of naively, just in a rush, said, "Oh, well, I could do a story from Elodie's point of view in her head." And then I went away and thought, God, I really hope they don't commission this, because I
don't want to.
I don't know how I'd write that, because she's, you don't want to know her really. Her power is her being completely inscrutable. So fortunately, it didn't work out, that story, because I had no clue how I would have gone about that. But
I mean, she definitely feels to me like I'm going to say there's a parallel with Rebecca in Daphne du Maurier. I felt there was, but I mean, she's got that magnetic quality, hasn't she? And yet the sort of sinister underlying. But the thing, I'm not giving away anything when I say this. The thing about her that it makes her different to Rebecca, makes the situation different to the Rebecca, Mrs. De Winter's situation, is that Elodie is Sylvie, the main character's daughter. You know, so the fact that she's not a love rival, well,
No.
not a romantic rival anyway.
But she is a dynamic.
She is, yeah, and it's more, you think, oh, and the fact is that like Mrs. De Winter and Manderley, Sylvie feels like an alien to me, felt like an alien in La Reverie, which is the house at the centre of the heat wave, and yet the house is Sylvie's ancestral home where she was born, and so she's an alien in her own. She's been sort of made an alien. So that was really
and
clever.
isn't quite sure if she's welcome there anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of slight sense of it being haunted
Yes,
by the
yes,
past, which
I
is
love.
the Gothic stuff coming through, and we know Gothic.
Bit of supernatural.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you just need a hint of it. It doesn't need to be real necessarily. It doesn't have to be a genuine haunting.
No.
It can be a sort of psychological haunting.
That's right.
But I think what's really fun with psychological suspense is that your heroine, your protagonist, is, you know, it's a heroine for me generally, but a hero as well. They're often unreliable, and I think that's really fun to write, because you can, you know, obviously with psychological suspense, you're keeping a lot back from the reader, and you're feeding and like drip feeding clues. And that's quite difficult if you've got a close first person narration, but actually if you've got that unreliability, you can really play with that. So the reader, if you get that kind of first person narration and it's all I did this, I did that, you assume as the reader that you can trust this person and that you're very close to them and you're seeing everything. So then when they drop a bombshell at some point, now actually I haven't mentioned this, and there's a big twist, that's really sort of powerful. And readers like being hoodwinked. I mean, you know, you guys will know that as crime fans. It's great. It's what you want. So there's a lot of scope there, I think.
Oh, I love an unreliable narrator. I try to make sure all mine are. If I can. Yes, and it is more difficult with first person. My first book was first person, and but luckily she'd got memory problems, which is a nice little thing you could sneak in, you know. Of the memory problems.
It's like no phone reception. It's like the
I'm just seeing, because we'll be running out of time, but things we haven't. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I can't.
That's all right.
Oh, pantsers or hi ladies, pleasure to listen to you. Thank you. Pantsers or planners?
Right, yes, this is a good one. I've always been a pantser, but this book I'm working on now, I've plotted it much more and planned it much more than I normally would, and I do think it's paying dividends, and I do think I probably should have done a bit more of that before. I've had to do quite a lot of editing at the other end before, and I think this way, and also I polish as I go, so I will give in an edit that ostensibly looks very finished, and actually there'll be structural issues with it, but the actual prose is I'm quite pleased with it, and there'll be nice imagery and nice setting stuff, and then I'm very loath to cut any of it. That's the trouble. Whereas actually I planned this one quite carefully, and actually had a really big long 2-hour Zoom session with my editor and just thrashed out the main plot beats, and she's kind of got her sign off in a way. And obviously I'll go off on tangents and things will occur to me as I go along that will change that. But I think basically the basic structure is there, which may be in other books. I mean, with The Stranger, I think I ended up cutting, it's about 80,000 words long, and I ended up cutting 60. And so I wrote, you know, altogether like 140,000 words probably for that. And if you told me at the beginning, that's what you're going to have to do, I would have been like, right, I'm going to plan this properly first, but I didn't. So I learned the hard way a bit with that.
But as you say, that one is quite a complex book, isn't it? Quite a complex story.
Yeah,
which I love.
But too many narrators. I did have a main narrator, but I also had the perspectives of lots of different people, and I had to lose. I think I lost 3 of them in the end. It's like, yeah.
How many have you got in the end? Was it 3?
3.
3.
Yeah, 3. I lost.
Sorry.
2 men I had to lose, which is a shame because I'd enjoyed writing in their heads actually, but they weren't to be. What about you though? Are you a planner?
No, I wish I was. I would like to be. I want to be. I try to be, but it never works. It's very much a sort of scene. Oh, I know vaguely what's going to happen. I know it's the inciting sort of incident, the premise, and I know vaguely what's going to happen at the end. But then in the middle, no, it just one thing leads to another, and I don't like that really. But it's the way I write. I'd rather not, but I can't seem to do it any other way, because when I do sit down and write a plan, I've had to abandon it. I hope you don't now with this one.
No, me too.
I have to abandon it.
I haven't got enough time to abandon it now. I just gotta go. Keep
It helps
going.
if you've got your editor to talk to, because I did that with the guest house. That was more planned, and there was quite a lot of, so I showed a certain amount to my editor, and we sort of went, oh no, that can't, it can't follow on from there, sort of thing. So that was helpful. But yeah, I'd rather be a planner, but you have to do what you do really,
Yeah,
and then you just gradually.
It's maybe worth giving it another go at some stage, because I would have said the same as you a couple of books ago, and I've adopted this different approach, and I thought it would take all the sort of pleasure out of it, or all the kind of spontaneity out of it, but actually, because the plan, all the fun bit of writing is not really this happens in this scene. It's all the colour and the kind of dialogue and
absolutely
insight. So actually, I haven't felt as though it's completely, taken all that kind of fun out of it for me. It's just made me feel safe. I just feel as though there's something there, and I just have to go and write it now. So I'm a bit of a convert. But yeah, you do have to do what you do, I guess.
Variety is the spice of life, Joe Singleton said. So that's just a comment. Good. I presume you mean on the different kind of books we read.
Yeah, maybe.
If you could live, Samantha's asked, if you could live anywhere for a year while you write a book set there, where would you go?
Oh, lovely. That's my kind of question. Well, I did love my month in France, but I've sort of done that now. So what I'd really like to do is go to America, I think, actually, and go somewhere, I don't know, like weird and probably very different to anything I've known, like Bible Belt or Charleston or somewhere like that. Or I mean, I've been to California and it was beautiful. So I would love to, that's a dream for me, because actually my languages aren't great. So I would really love to go somewhere very sunny, but where I could speak English, quite honestly, because it's not my strong point. But yes, so that would be my dream. Once it's all calmed down, all the COVID's calmed down, maybe I'll do it.
I think I'd like to go to Paris and live in one of those lovely apartments for a year. And my French is not very good, but I could, learn French. Probably not write a book then, but try to write a book.
You could wander around with a notebook and that would be lovely.
Be a writer, cook food like I bought in the markets. I quite like that, I think, yes. If anyone will pay me to do that, I will write a book, I promise.
Yeah.
There's things jumping up and down that I can't read. Oh,
doing very well.
Oh, yes. Somebody says, many thanks to you both for an hour in your company. Very interesting chat. Well, thank you too. I wish we got the names, but it looks like we've run out of time. So I don't know what happens and how we say goodbye. I suppose, is it time? Yes, I think it is. Oh, I've had such a lovely time. Thank you, Kate, for being here. There's so many other things to ask and to say.
Yeah, we could talk and talk. No, it's been really, really nice. And I'm so glad we got through our small technical hitch at the beginning. I've cooled down now as well. I was rushing around looking for cables and things, but it's all fine. But no, it's been lovely to come on. And the book club looks great. I had a look on Facebook and got millions of members, and it's a really nice thing.
Join. It's a wonderful place.
I must.
And everyone read Kate's books, any or all of them, and short stories. I've read a short story of yours recently, Red Letter. Something.
There is one of those.
The Red Letter, that was good. So I think it's time for us to say a very fond goodbye, and thank you for having us. And buy our books.
Yay. Thanks so much.
Bye, Kate. Bye.